So I had all of this stress and pressure because, my mom's like end of life needing care. And I had a very colorful life. And I was well off. I'd worked, I'd built a couple of businesses and sold them all. So I was good. And I got really lucky with real estate. Like I
Nice.
lived in a place that was like crappy, it would gentrify, or like when I was in Oregon, all the people from California were coming up when Intel was getting built out. So a house that, cost me 300K in 1999, I was able to sell for a few $1 million, like, well,
Ooh.
and a half a few years later. So I was flush, like, and that was luck. I'm not brilliant or anything. That was total happenstance. So then I come back to New York, and I'm flush. I got a house. I got most of my stuff together. And then I wound up getting pregnant, and I had to stop all my medication. And I'm around my family, so I'm thinking like I'll be good, but no, because my family still has that scarcity mindset, right?
Mhm.
So I wind up investing in a business for my brother. He can't get a checking account. I had no idea what check systems was, but um, my brother was on it, and I had invested a lot of money buying these businesses for him to run. And then eventually all that money was gone, and it was my checking account, not his. So I was responsible for all the nefarious activities that came out of that account because
Mm.
I owned the account. But I also trusted. And now, I've got a kid, and, I'm doing the parenting thing, and I'm not paying attention, and I don't, I'm not on top of it. And then when I started to realize that there was a problem, I couldn't ever get ahead of it. I didn't know how to fix it. And my brain's not working right. And then I wound up in the it's not politically correct, but we always called it the funny farm or the nut house. Like I
The
wound up,
mental institution.
yeah.
Yeah.
I hate saying like mental institute. Like we have to come up with
Yeah.
better verbiage for this, but I don't like mental institution either. Maybe psychiatric facility. And I
That's
went
a good one.
and I went straight from there to the county jail for all of these checks. And I wasn't free for 5 years after that.
Wow. Wow. Would you say that maybe not having been flush with money to get a good attorney had something to do with that?
So I did have, so here's the thing, because I had never been through the system before. I didn't know anything, but I had a business lawyer. So I just called my business lawyer. My business lawyer was like, oh, we could fit. So I used a business attorney. I
For a
didn't,
criminal case.
right. I didn't know any better. And I
Mhm.
trusted this guy. And
Mm-hmm.
I would have probably been much better off with a public defender, but I didn't know. Um,
Okay.
but
We never hear that.
I know.
That's something we never hear. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm not mad about it either because I realized like at other parts in my life, where because I did have a mouth, like I always got out of like before anything escalated, there were like Sarita, you made a really good point about like the people around you, like as
Mhm.
like insulation. So especially if I was like working through a medication change, having the privilege of people around you to kind of like run interference,
Mhm.
that saved me from going through the system as someone with a diagnosis like I have, because I had the privilege of someone to run interference. So there was a layer of protection against any of my conduct and the rest of the world. And
Right.
otherwise, I would have been in the system probably when I was 15 because
Yeah. So I
anyway.
want to ask you, I want to ask, so how was that for you, that experience? Could you go back and remember that first time being in prison, like being in jail and receiving this time? So you can go to the time that you actually received that time, because I don't care if it's 1 year, 5 years, or 30 years. That's a lot of time when you're not, a part of the system, so to
So
speak.
yeah, so So it took a while to be stabilized at the psychiatric facility, and the psychiatric facility, when I went directly from there to the county jail, so you would think continuity of care would be good.
No.
What, like, I was really glad to find out that the treating psychiatrist that I had at the psychiatric facility headed the psych services at the county jail. So I'm like, okay, phew, like I don't have to tell all this stuff to somebody else, and like it's going to help me adjust. No, that's not what happened, because
Not at all.
none of the drugs were formulary. I had to
Explain formulary to our audience. So
oh,
people that aren't, yeah.
so the totally 100% legal and legal drugs that I needed for stability to manage my mental illness were not drugs that the county jail would prescribe. And they would say things like, people misuse it, they sell it to get high, you don't really need it.
That's
Or
it. That's it right there. That you don't really need it. That you don't really need it. And I'm just going to touch on my own personal pain. I broke my arm falling off a bunk in the penitentiary, and it was too long before they finally let me go to surgery. I'm absolutely sure they had to break my arm. I have a plate and pins. And I remember saying, hey, are you going to renew my pain meds? And she was like, well, you're a week post-op. So you don't, and I said, well, hey, I'm not going to beg you. So they went ahead and reordered them, but that is the mentality, because you're in prison, you're made of steel. So you don't need pain meds. You can have a broken arm and we're going to send you with some Tylenol packets, because that's the way they feel about us. You can have serious mental illness and everything is under the umbrella of Haldol, which has such powerful side effects that you have to take Cogen, another medication, to fight the tardive dyskinesia, which is facial movements that you can't control. So
yeah,
if you have a serious,
I never had anything like that. And I'd been on mental health meds for, at that point, 15 years.
Yeah.
And
had they offered you anything like that though?
yeah, well, when I got to prison, the only thing they would give me was like Thorazine, and my lips started doing.
That's tardive dyskinesia. Are we on the same page?
Absolutely.
They will give you things in the penitentiary that are, you know what? I try and work on my cussing. They will mess you up. And some of those things cannot be changed.
No,
they will stick.
Who came home and they still have like motor dysfunction, like they've got like funny twitches, like with their fingers.
Yep.
And stuff. And
yeah, now I want to circle back to this though. The same quality of care that you were getting in a psychiatric facility was not. It didn't carry over to the county jail. But here's the important point that you stated: it was run by the same individual.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And
when you left that facility, you were no longer a human being. You were a number. And somehow through the van ride from there to the county jail, you became a different individual who deserved different care, all from the same individual. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, same county entity, but yeah, so location matters. 1,000%.
Absolutely.
Just one trip down Broadway and your life has changed.
Absolutely.
So that was the first thing. And then like talking about trying to figure everything out was really hard. But one thing is, so I know that I'm not wrapped, and I'm going through a few things, right? Never been in that situation before. And like, so when I get called to medication, like we all line up and we have to bring a cup with water in it, like to go get our medications. And I've got to go, so I'm like on the top tier. And so I'm looking out and I was like, oh my God, like out of 48 women in this housing unit, which was all of the people, all the women in that county. Actually, I found out later that it wasn't just this county, because that's when I was introduced to this idea that they like sell beds in jails to make money. Like
Yeah.
I was blown away by that. So
Mm-hmm.
48 people, 48 women, only 4 of us were white. And I remember thinking, like, this is how dangerous it is, like these narratives that we have, that we absorb and just accept.
Mm-hmm.
So
That wait, tell the narrative. What's the narrative?
uh, so I'm like, oh my God, this county is like 80-90% white. And that means all the criminals in this county are here and they're all black. Like they are all like they found all the criminals and they are all black. And then it made me feel like I don't really belong here, obviously. So it didn't occur to me that it's because of, like, that's where they police and they enforce laws against these people in a way that they don't in the community that I come from. But I just automatically, it was like, oh my God, all the criminals are. And then they all knew better. Like they were like, oh, so were you driving drunk? And I'm like, no. They're like, that's like the only way white people are in jail. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no. And then so I like acclimating myself with this belief that I had about the world. Not that I thought like all I definitely did not believe like, oh, all black people are criminals, but I was like, oh my gosh, like all the ones that like they're here and they're all, no, it should have been like, if it had been if our systems worked right, 90% of the people in there would have been white. Because like the opportunity to be in a place like that would have been evenly distributed. But I couldn't fathom that any of this was unfair or that the system was gamed in a certain way. I automatically believed like, oh, that's where all the criminals are. And it took me like going to prison and having that experience duplicate for me to finally understand, like, no, it's because like I didn't believe that people like that cops would come in and plant evidence, because that didn't happen in my universe. And I'm like,
Yeah.
That
guys,
was an excuse that the black people made up for the reason why they were going to jail. This is, and I'm just going to call it what it is, as they say, call a spade, but you are the average American white woman. So if you would have never experienced this, then when you go to the voting establishment, to the polls, you're going to vote heavy criminal justice. And what that trickles down to is black and brown people, watch out, because you got caught up in the system. And you said it, you kept getting caught up. That's what happens to them. You start off, and sometimes that minor offense is not even yours. It's snowball effect. Snowball effect. Now I'll tell you something.